You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raca, is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Amen. Seoul National University's Graduate School of Public Health, such a long name, conducts annual research on modern people's feeling of resentment. This year's study revealed that 54.9% of Koreans are in a state of chronic resentment. Can you believe that? 54.9% of all Korean people are chronically angry about something or someone. It's increased 60% from last year. That's a huge number when you think about it. When you walk around on the street, one out of two people that you meet is angry about something. And as we know, there are countless anger-related issues and crimes happening around us every day. This is an incident that happened a few weeks ago. There was this 20s woman who violently harassed, harmed 10-year-old girl inside elevator. And you know what the reason was? Because that 10-year-old girl didn't give her ice cream. When she asked on the street, then this 10-year-old girl was eating ice cream, and she said, can you give me one? Can you give me one? Out of nowhere. And of course, the 10-year-old girl didn't know her, so no. And she followed into the elevator, and she was a neighbor. She heard it, brutally, heard it. 10-year-old girl inside the elevator. And there are countless numbers of these kind of crimes and issues happening around our society. And the reason is, as we just heard, 54.9% Koreans are in chronic resentment. Did you get angry today when you're coming to the church? No? Good. Or yesterday, have you felt any anger in your heart? No? Very good. You're being a good Christian. But let's be honest, once in a week or once in 2 or 3 days, we get angry. Because anger is a natural human feeling. It's a natural human emotion that can happen every day or for any reasons. We could get angry when someone, ignores us. When you call someone because she didn't hear you or he didn't hear you or just did it on purpose, we get angry when someone ignores us. We get angry when someone cuts into our lane while we are driving. This happens a lot. When we're driving, someone cuts in without showing any signal lights, we get angry, saying, what is that guy doing? I'm trying to go my way and cuts in. We get angry, right? We get angry, especially when our family, fails us. When our family don't keep their promises, we get angry. The intensity may differ, but we all experience anger almost every day. If you didn't get angry today, good for you. But almost every day, we get angry for someone or something or some reason. However, however, this is important. Jesus today tells us that anyone who is angry with a brother or a sister, when he says brother or sister, he's talking about everyone, okay? Not just your family, will be subject to judgment. Now that's harsh. What he's saying is that, until now, before hearing this Jesus, statement, until then, people thought that we would be judged by God only when we commit murder or physically harm someone or mentally harm someone, right? But Jesus is telling right now that even being just angry to someone or something is enough to be judged by God. What does he mean? But everybody gets angry, right? So what does he mean? Is he saying that we should never get angry? Is that it? Is he saying that we should suppress our feelings? Whenever we get angry, we need to suppress it? But we know that we feel anger almost every day, small or big, right? And we know that suppressing our emotion gives us nothing but bad results, right? There is huge consequence when we suppress our feelings. So what is Jesus really telling us to do? I get angry almost every day because my personality, last week I told you that I'm a doubtful person, right? And also my characteristic that I inherited from my North Korean heritage, we get angry all the time because our personality is, how do you call it? Not violent, but unique, North Koreans, our emotions are strong. So we get angry almost, about everything. I'm not saying that we're bad, but just as I told you, angry is a natural human emotion. So we easily get angry. So, am I going to go to hell? Because I get angry almost all the time. So, what should we do? Am I going to be judged? So today, we will talk about what to do when anger takes over us, because that happens. And how our Father, our God, can help us with this. So when Jesus tells us that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment, he is pointing us to the root of human behavior. Because Jesus, when he sees us, he does not look at things on the surface. He sees through us. Jesus sees deep into our heart and into our souls. So he's not just looking at this violent act, which we call murder, but he is looking at the roots. Every action has a cause, right? Everything has a cause. It's just simple physics. And murder is also no exception. So what caused someone to commit such a violent act against other human being? What's the cause? Yes, it begins with anger. Anger grows into and evolves into this violent act called murder. But let's be clear. Just as I said, anger is not a sin. Itself is not destructive. It is not. Just because you are angry with your father doesn't mean that you hit your father, right? It's a human emotion. In and of itself, it's not destructive or harmful, or it's not sin. And you know what? Jesus got angry too, right? Remember? Jesus got angry with his own disciple when Peter said, "No, you cannot sacrifice yourself." And Jesus called him Satan, saying, "Get behind me, Satan." Jesus was really angry at him. But it doesn't mean that Jesus punched him, right? Of course it didn't. Jesus is not a violent person. And also, Jesus got angry when he saw merchants, and sacrifice animal selling merchants on the church court. He was, chasing away animals. He made a whip out of some rope and, cleared out merchants, shouting at merchants. He was angry, not consumed by rage, but he was clearly angry. Is Jesus capable of making sins? No. So angry is not sin. Then what is the problem? Why is Jesus telling us that getting angry to your brother and sister is subject to judgment? The problem begins not with the anger, but the problem begins when we leave our anger unchecked. That's the problem. Unresolved anger grows into hatred. Almost always. It grows into hatred. And hatred turns into cursing. And mixed of hatred and curses and all these negative emotions towards someone or something evolves into rage. And rage explodes into violent and destructive behavior, like murder. That's the problem. Anger is like a spark in our heart. It's like a small spark. It may seem so small when it happens. It seems harmless when it happens. But if we let it grow, it becomes like a wildfire. It consumes us. A wildfire that burns our peace, our relationship, and even our lives. And most importantly, if anger is left unchecked, unresolved, it will grow into something that can damage our relationship with God. That's fatal. That is why we must not let anger take root in our hearts. So that's the problem. Anger in itself is not a problem. The problem is that we let it grow. Most of the time, we let it grow. We just cover it up. We just look the other way. I'm angry. We do nothing about it. So then what should we do? Many people, misunderstand Jesus' command, thinking that he wants us to, just suppress our, anger. Just, cover it up. But we know that human emotions, when it's suppressed, we get, bad consequences. Whether it is a good thing, good emotion, or bad emotions, when we suppress it, it becomes unhealthy, It produces unhealthy consequences. What we need to do is that we leave our anger in God's hands. That's what we need to do. We need to surrender it to our God. When we go to the counselor, it's not a common practice in Korea, but in Western culture, people, when they have some strong emotions, when they have problems, they go to counselor. What do? They just talk about their problems. They talk about their emotions. They talk about their feelings. They talk about their angers to counselor. They just pour it out, right? But there is a difference between counselor and God. Counselor do not do anything about it. They just hear it. They just let you figure it out, right? But God, it works similar. So what we do is when we get angry, when we feel angry, just like counselor, we say, God, I am so angry. I am so angry about that person. That person makes me angry, bothers me every day. I think that person's goal is to make my life, hard. What's the problem of that person? I really want to punch him. Don't just, swallow it up. Talk to God. Say that you're angry. God, I don't know what to do with this feeling. I can't do anything about it. God, talk to him. Just pour it out. When we read the psalm written by David, we see that David poured out all of his emotions, all of his rage, resentment, sorrow, sadness, desire for revenge. He didn't act it out. All he did was just pour it out to God. When you read the psalm, sometimes there are really dark things in there, right? David is asking God to, kill all his enemies, just wipe them out, wipe the nations out, like let your fire rain down. There are so many dark things there. What is he doing? Is he trying to curse them? No. He's just pouring out all of his emotions to God. Like when someone goes to counselor. But there's a difference between counselor and God. Counselors, they do nothing about it. They just hear it. But God does something about it. Every time that David poured out all his angry emotions and rage and resentment because caused by others or something or someone, God acted and resolved all those, causes of his angers. The roots of angers. He solved it for David. When David talked about, wiping out those people, destroying those cities and nations that's making David's life hard, God did something about them. David didn't have to do anything about it because God took care of it. God cared for him. Even the revenge, God avenged for David. God took David's anger. He just listened. He just, without judgment, without correction, without advice. Counselor, sometimes they give advice. And that advice can even make our situation worse because we don't accept that advice. Or sometimes, counselors make some correction about our emotions, but we don't want any correction from them, right? God does nothing, just God hears, because God is capable of accepting, hearing and taking in all the bad emotions and deadly emotions and destructive emotions that we have in our heart and souls, because God's heart is wider than this universe, right? So to leave our anger in God's hands is not to deny it. Denying your emotion is dangerous. It can make you unhealthy. It means to acknowledge our anger. It's very important for us to acknowledge that we are angry. We need to identify our own emotions. We need to accept it. And instead of letting it just fester or hiding or covering up, because most people do, when they feel some negative feeling, they know it's bad. They just want to hide it or deny it, right? And that can lead into, bad consequences. What we need instead is to bring our anger, our, rage, our resentment to God, honestly, before God. You don't have to hide it, because some people, some Christians, they feel, I don't want to, show my dark side to God, because we are worried that God might judge us, right? Because it is written in today's text that getting angry to others is subject to judgment. So they just want to hide it. But Jesus is not telling us to hide it. Instead, bring it to God. Then God will resolve it. That's what Jesus is telling. And it is not also just about letting it go. Some people, because they couldn't do anything about their emotions, they try to just let it go. Like the song, let it go, let it go. Just let it go. You know what? Letting it go resolves nothing. It will be back. Because you didn't do anything about it. It will be back. You know why people keep going to counselors? Because they just let it go and it went back. Leaving it in hands of God is not hiding it, denying it, or letting it go. What we do is entrust our anger to God. We are entrusting it because we trust God, that God will solve this problem, the cause of our anger, cause of our resentment, cause of our rage. God will resolve this. We know that God will handle source of our anger, source of our rage. God will solve it. Even revenge. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 7 says, cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. And in Rome chapter 12 verse 19 says, do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. You see, even your revenge, you don't have to do it, because when you take your revenge by yourself, it becomes sin, right? Because when you're trying to take revenge, you have to hurt someone. That's a sin. But thankfully, God is going to avenge for us. Not in a bad way, but in a good way. That's important. Not only God resolves our feelings, God does something for us when we feel vengeful. When we feel, I want to do revenge. God even solved these strong feelings. Whatever the cause of our anger may be, God will take care of it. It's proven. It's written in the Psalm. God will take care of us. And God will bring justice too. Isn't it great? God will take care of you. So leave it to God. Our angry emotions, so leave it to God. Why let your soul be consumed by anger when there is someone who can handle it far better than any human being? Why do it ourselves when God can do it for us? The best example of someone who left his anger in God's hands is, of course, none other than Joseph. I love Joseph. He's my role model. Joseph, as we know, was betrayed by his own brothers, right? His 11 brothers. When he was only 17, can you believe that? When he was only 17, his brothers sold him as a slave. Of course, they tried to kill him, but the oldest brother, he tried to save him. He came up with this idea, just throw him into the pit so he can save him later. But these 10 brothers, impossible, crazy brothers, sold their own flesh and blood as a slave. And as if that weren't enough, when he got to Egypt, he was really a good person. He did his best as a slave, but he was first falsely accused and thrown into prison. He didn't do anything wrong, right? His master's wife tried to seduce him, and as being a faithful person, Joseph didn't, Joseph denied it. I can't have an affair with my master's wife. It was a rightful thing to do, but this woman, this unbelievable woman, wrongfully accused him, and Joseph got thrown into prison. For 13 years, he was in the prison without fair reason. 13 years. Have you been to prison for 13 years? No. I was in the army about 2 years, and it felt like a prison. And my father one day asked me, if someone gives you 1 billion won, will you go back to military? I said, no way. Even if that person gives me 100 billion won, I will not go to military. 13 years in prison. But surprisingly, we don't see single verse that says Joseph hated his brother. No, we don't see it. It doesn't say he spent sleepless nights burning with rage. No, we don't see that part in the Bible. Joseph didn't blame his brothers. He didn't spend his years in the prison, 13 years planning revenge. No. Instead, when he finally faced his brothers, those brothers, if I was Joseph, I would, since I am a second powerful person in Egypt, I would execute him. Execute them the moment I see them. My brothers, take them away and chop their heads off. No. Instead, this is what Joseph said. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. Joseph saying it in front of 11 brothers who sold him as a slave. Now, this is a man who left his anger in God's hands. And when we do the same, when we surrender our pain, our resentment, our anger, God turns it into good. That is who our God is. A God who transforms pain into purpose. A God who rewrites betrayal into blessing. Isn't that amazing? A God who takes our deepest wounds and brings life through them. That's who God is. We cannot control our anger. When you try to control it, it grows into something that we cannot do anything about. But when we leave our anger in God's hands, even though the anger may not disappear right away, because it will not disappear, because anger is a human emotion, but it will not consume us. And it will not control us when we leave it in hands of God. Leaving our anger in God's hand is not simply ignoring or just covering it up. It is a choice made in faith. It is a path to freedom. Free from our anger. Free from our resentment. This is important, especially our people. 54.9% of our people are having chronic resentment. This is important. We need to be an example, just like David, Joseph, and Jesus. We need to show our people, our neighbors, our friends, that we can leave our anger in God's hands, so that their lives can also be free from this destructive, feelings that can destroy their lives. So let's leave our angers in the hands of God. Let God take care of us. Let God avenge for us. Let God repay for us. And let's show this to people out there, that this is what happens when we leave our anger in hands of God. Let's pray.